All right, here we go. Hey, I'm Jean from the band Syne, or Syne is my musical project. We have 4 albums. 5? Yeah, we have 4 albums. What's so important about album artwork, if I think back to when I was growing up and I was really getting into listening to music and discovering the albums that I grew to really love, to me, the album artwork had so much to do with how I imagined the music. You know, it was almost like the imagery that I saw in my head when I listened to the music was completely related to what the album artwork was. I want to sort of give the listener cues on the imagery to have in their heads when they listen to the music. And it's not to say that they have to think of that, but I think it just helps to kind of draw people into this world that you're creating and expand that world in many ways. I think all of our senses in many ways are linked, you know, whether it's taste, smell, sight, sound, all these things. And while, you know, you don't necessarily have to be synesthetic, which I guess is, you know, seeing colors when you hear sound, I still think that music has a way of taking you somewhere. And if you provide the listener with a really strong set of visual cues, it's easier to sort of transport them into that place that you want to take them to. Often when an album gets to a certain point and it feels like there's kind of a cohesive sound developing, because almost every album that we make is a little bit different from the previous one. Like, we're never just going and trying to repeat what we did in the past. Every album sort of gets to a point where it feels like there's this picture developing of what the sound of the record is. Whenever that happens, I feel like I always start getting imagery in my head, and it's almost when I start tuning into that imagery that it helps me to finish off the record. And it's normally at this point that we'll start working with a designer. You know, each album it's been different who we've worked with to make the artwork. Yeah, I mean, like, for example, you know, on our second album, Matter, we worked with a clothing label called Soulland from Denmark, from Copenhagen in Denmark. And in particular, the guy who started the label, Silas Adler, and we developed the concept for the album cover together. I'll show it to you over here. So this is the cover for our second record, Matter. And yeah, we just came up with this idea of taking things from our everyday life and sort of creating this like fantasy world where we live in this like amazing mid-century kind of desert home, and there's all these things. And then the idea was that we could take each of these elements and turn that into kind of a single cover. We continue to do it because it's a passion of ours, you know, you know, and it's you know, we can take any of these albums that we've made, whether it's this, our first record, or, you know, like this, and all of them can be hung in a frame, and, you know, it can be a piece of art that we can be proud of that hangs on our wall. And I just feel like it's such a shame that, you know, on streaming services, it's kind of displayed as this tiny little icon, and then you click on it and then some other thing comes up, not the artwork. So you're almost never able to see the artwork in like a full resolution situation, which is, you know, when I was a kid and, you know, my parents had loads of vinyl records. And I just remember discovering records, and the coolest thing about it was, you know, picking up the record, opening it up, browsing through all the things, you know, seeing photos of the band and seeing the studio that they worked in, seeing them laugh together, or maybe there weren't any photos of the recording, but it was just this kind of magical world that the band created. And that really drew me into what the music was telling me in many ways. I think it's really a shame that we've lost that, honestly. I do miss that experience of playing a record and having the artwork displayed, you know, and especially with our kids, because our kids love music and we love playing records for them, and they love, you know, both of our kids will happily sit through an entire album and just listen to it. It sucks that we can't show them that artwork. And what I love about the idea of Syne is that we can show that and they can get absorbed into that visual world that goes along with the music. So the reason I think it's the perfect time for Syne to exist is because we live in this insanely visual world where, you know, we're just constantly bombarded with videos on our phones and notifications and all this kind of stuff. There's very few devices that enable us to, in many ways, unplug from all of those distractions, but also give us the visual things that we want that aren't distracting. And I think what is so beautiful about Syne is you can just have it next to your record player or next to your speakers. You know, Indy, our oldest, is he's 6 years old and he's really, really musical, and he has his own playlist, you know, and when we're driving around, he insists on only listening to his playlist, and it has a whole variety of music, some old, some new, you know, there's from Dua Lipa to Elio to Fleetwood Mac to just like all sorts of different songs that he's discovered and loves. And he always wants to see the album artwork. If he discovers a new song, if he hears a new song, he's always like, can I see the picture? Can I see the picture? And what drives me crazy is, you know, we really try and minimize the amount of, not to a crazy degree because this is the world we live in, but we really try and minimize the amount of screen time they get from phones. And I think what is amazing about this is that it can just be there and he never has to ask. The artwork is just there. He can go look at it when a song is playing and he immediately knows what it is. And so you're not being distracted by social media or anything. It is just showing you the album artwork in its pure form, and I think that's amazing.